Welcome to the For Everyday Leaders podcast. Brandon Faust, Alex Holt here with you today. Alex, why don't you tell us what this podcast is all about?
Yeah, this podcast is all about helping people lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life. And today we have a good friend of ours on the show.
Real good friend.
Real good, long time friend.
Way back.
Way back.
Long-time friend of the show. Before the show.
Yeah. We have Neil Hinders with us today. Neil has led in various capacities over the last decades, mainly serving others, right? It has been decades. I know. Mainly serving others. Just some highlights about Neil. He was a recording artist. He was the head coach of Cheer and Dance Atlanta. He's been working in pastoral ministry for nearly 20 years. So decades. I wasn't crazy.
It's true.
And Neil recently launched R3 Restoration. As he was doing that, he got plugged in and jumped in to the Wayfinders Impact Studio cohort. And so he became the founder and executive director of R3 Restoration. And they provide services in burnout prevention and restoration for leaders through retreats, sabbatical planning, assessments, coaching, and care.
Neil.
Nailed it.
Come on.
Wow.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the coffee today.
Yeah, man.
Hey, Neil brought us all coffee,
Cheers.
which we're very grateful for this morning. Neil and I met, it's been quite a while now, but it was back at a church camp. We were at different churches working at the time. One thing led to another.
As it does at church camp.
Careful with that. Long story short, we ended up being able to work together for several years, have stayed friends somehow.
It's
tough to do.
It's been everywhere, but it's been like we've stayed the course.
And then when you were sharing some things that were on your heart of what you were hoping to launch, it's been really cool to have that kind of coincide with we were getting ready to launch our Impact Studio cohort for that next round, and you jumped into that. And so it's been cool just to see you in that context too, and to see some of the things you're doing. I'm excited for people to hear about that. I think these topics around burnout and care in this day and age, especially when it comes to any sort of leadership, is a big deal, let alone some of the things with pastoral ministry. And I know shared hearts and backgrounds within that. And so I really want to encourage our listeners to stay tuned for that. That might not be something directly for you, but I think in this conversation, you're going to find your story somewhere in all of this, as well as you probably know somebody or care for somebody who's maybe been going through some burnout sort of things going on, or maybe you have a close relationship and you can kind of maybe see that coming on the horizon for them. Yeah. And so we're really excited to share about those resources. But before we get into all of that, of what's going on with R3 and what you're launching there and have been doing with that, we want to get to know Neil. We want to get to know the story.
Bring it on.
I love these because especially people who I've known for a long time, there's always a little tidbit that I pick up, something I didn't know in their story. So tell us about Neil. Where did you grow up? What was life like for you growing up as a kid?
Yeah, well, thanks for allowing me to join you guys on the podcast, Brandon and Alex. This is great. So my life, growing up on the south side of Indianapolis, and really, my parents are from Kokomo and Avon. That's where they're from. Yeah. So brought us back to Indianapolis at some point when I was like 3 or 4. But I've been a part of the Indianapolis south side area. Went to Franklin Central High School. And as I was growing up, really was just a church kid. We'd go to church every week, and it was just a really incredible experience at Indian Creek Christian Church there, where I really fell in love with Jesus. And that kind of led me down to these just different paths out of high school into college, where went to Bethel College, went to Columbus State University. But I was always known as that kid that was like adventurous, willing to try anything. My parents would have to like pull me off of the playground area where I was trying to do backflips on my own, and just like, what is this kid doing? He's jumping off of the playground equipment. He's going to hurt himself. So they put me into tumbling and gymnastics, and that kind of led me down this road of loving like the adventurous sports, right? Yeah. Doing things that I probably shouldn't be doing, but needing coaching because I was going to hurt myself. And so that was just my personality. But I would do that, and I remember going to college, and I remember some cheerleaders approached me. It was like, why are these cheerleaders approaching me? I love college. This is great. And they knew I was a tumbler. I could do some flips, but my sister had told them, so she totally conned them into asking me to be a part of the cheerleading program.
Yeah.
And so that led me to an opportunity where I would travel throughout the nation and do cheerleading camps. And that's how I found some gifts that God's given me from communication, leadership, worship. And that kind of led me down this track that you guys described around you were this cheerleader, but you were also you're also a pastor, and
don't
it's
forget
very random, right?
The musician, I know he downplays it now. Musician and songwriter. Yep. I remember we were in the office and we found it. We found his music, and I'm like, dang, okay, Neil's pretty talented. Like this guy can do a lot of things, but it's been fun to see how you've kind of held all of those loosely in different eras, but also take principles that have kind of pushed you to where you're at today.
I can do a lot of things. I wouldn't say I can do them really well, but I've been able to do a lot of fun things, That said, just to be able to be a coach, but to also be a musician, but then to be a pastor. I couldn't write that story myself. I don't think anyone could for themselves, but it's been neat to see how God's kind of laid it out for me, and I've just trusted him as I've gone. So
I have to tell this story because now this was a while ago, but it was like one of our opening event weekends at the church we were working at together, and we did like an Avicii cover song.
Yes. Oh yeah, we did.
And Neil just busted out like a flip on stage and like nailed it. Like absolutely unapologetically, no mats, no nothing. And I was like, it was like iconic moment.
I was also terrified for my life because it was on a stage. It was like a 2 foot, 3 foot raised stage. It was dark, only a couple of spotlights.
Don't recommend this.
And I remember landing this flip, and I hadn't done one in a while. I thought I was going to break my back or something. I was like 20 something at the time. It's been a while. But I remember landing this, and my foot was probably like an inch away from the edge of the stage. I was like, I would have totally killed myself.
It was an iconic moment.
It was pretty amazing. So Neil, give us in all of this a formative moment, a moment or season of life that shaped your life, your leadership. You've had this trajectory of always genuinely, and anybody who's met you would attest to this, like heart to serve other people, period.
Yeah.
Like in any of those domains, in any of those careers or things that were going on in these eras of your life, what was kind of been that formative moment, a moment or season in life that kind of shaped your life, leadership, and trajectory? Yeah,
I would say that transition from cheerleading to pastoring was pretty formative. I remember having a lot of people in my life that would call things out in my life that I didn't see for myself. And so coaching at the gym, you'd have students come to me and just call me youth pastor, and I was like, I'm not your youth pastor, but I'm a coach, and I would play worship songs. I would speak for some of their youth events, like things like that. But for me to be a head coach, not planning to be a pastor, loving what I was doing, it just naturally kind of came out of me, just like, this is so much more than just cheerleading. This is obviously an opportunity to be missional for Christ. And it just led to these open doors where kids were just calling me pastor. I was able to speak at funerals, really minister to kids and their families in really difficult times. But then I remember a friend of mine at the time, she was just like, Neil, like, you're doing this cheerleading thing, but all you talk about is Jesus, and all these kids are calling you pastor. I feel like there's something more in your life. And that happened probably 3 times in 3 months from 3 different people. No joke. Which led me down this path of saying, I need to think differently about my life. And I'm listening to right now my own voice about what I want to be doing and how great this has been. But I feel like this part of the journey is coming to the end. So it's something new.
And there's so much in that too, going back, even you having the ability, I think, in that to look back at all those different spaces that you had been in, even from growing up in high school, being involved in action sports, adventure sports, whatever, and seeing those different transferable skills. Like we talk about that a lot in the Wayfinders community, that ability of, we all have these things in us, and it doesn't just define us to one role, one sector, one space. And so I think it's also really important for all of us to be able to go back and like introspectively look at those things. What do I have skill and gifting in, and how can I use that in this next season that maybe God's calling me into when that pastor thing starts to become more prevalent and more of like, oh, this is the direction he's calling me, and he's already equipped me with all these things that I need.
And that's like a two-way street in some respects. So like for some of you listening, you're like, yeah, like that's shapes my story too. I'm doing this thing over here in the marketplace, or, as a coach or whatever, and bringing, embodying the love of Jesus and the truth of Jesus and those things that I'm doing, as well as on the other side, people who've worked in maybe local church ministry and saying, I don't know how to practice outside of those four walls, this missional way of life, and so I think it's a beautiful thing and a reference point of like a two-way street in respects of, regardless of where you're at, that's what we're actually called to do. Now, there are going to be times where God makes it abundantly clear through trusted people, maybe sometimes even on short timelines, where you go, wait a minute, what am I to be doing now? A steward of this is now, what do I do now?
And this was 2008. The housing market crashes. I can't sell my house. I'm making good money where I am, and I'm going to give all of that up, try to sell my house when it's impossible, and move back home and to go to seminary for ministry. It didn't make any sense. So the tension of this was real. So for those who are feeling the tug and feeling the change, it requires faith, true sacrificial faith that honestly, if I was not following Jesus in that time, I probably would have messed the whole thing up. So
that's good. So let's talk. You move back to Indy, you go seminary, you get into like ministry, and you have I think a really exciting career in that space where you've really encouraged a lot of people. We got to work together in that time. And so let's talk about a little bit of that journey and then kind of where that's led, because I know that led to kind of a rough season in the last several years of that.
Yeah, ministry, man, you sign up and you're like, this is going to be the best people. They love Jesus. I can't wait to be around them every day. And there's aspects of that that's true, but they're also human beings, right? And so 2 or 3 years into ministry, man, I was like ready to quit ministry because I was like, this is so political. This is so challenging. No one can get along. No one has the same idea of what we're even doing. And it was just really a difficult season for me to say, this was harder work than I anticipated. Right. And then God really humbled me in the middle of that. He just said, Neil, like, that's why I called you here, to actually be a part of making the bride of Christ, the church, spotless and pure. So you're going to have to get messy. You're going to have to get into the divisive things to make it unified, right? To bring healing from brokenness, just as I did for you in your life. That was a messy season for you, Neil. Remember that when you went through all this drama in your own life and I had to rescue you from it? I've called you to just do the same thing for the church. That's what pastors do. They shepherd the flock in that way. How do you, because everyone's personality is a little different, and mine definitely is a little different from many, but, this idea of, man, the intention of, I want to help restore it. I want to help make it better. I want to help improve it. I definitely had that, and at times probably bumped into my own ego in the midst of that. Like, hey, my ideas may be better, or if people would just listen to this here, then, we could all just kind of move forward. How do you reconcile this tension of we have one Messiah, we have one Savior. I'm not it, know? And so how do you, out of pure intentions, saying, I want to help, but also not put these things on your own back? Because I felt like there have definitely been seasons in my own life where I have done that, inside the context of local church ministry and outside the context of local, hey, I can do this and I'm going to figure this out. And if we could just push this forward, then everything will be fine. And then, another challenge comes through. We just got to work through it. You got to work the big hours, answer the late calls, all that stuff. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that in that space? And I've also realized on this side, 6 years now I've been outside of local church ministry, which is crazy. And I still get to help local church, which is beautiful. It's been wonderful in a lot of ways. But I think on this side, I've gained empathy in realizing that this isn't just something that's happening for the pastors. Right. It's happening. It's widespread in culture, but also like there's a unique ways that it's happening, I think, with pastors, nonprofit leaders, different things like that. Speak to that a little bit, because that is just like such a big topic, and it always seems like there's not enough resources, not enough exposure of resources on those things, man. Well, let me tell you, I did not do it well. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now, because I I really learned the hard way. I learned how not to do it so that I can do it rightly and help others do it rightly, and still working through what that looks like. And so I remember like kind of having that breakthrough moment of, yes, Lord, I'm here for this reason. But then I went on this journey of, okay, I'm a youth pastor. And then you see, I don't know if I'm on right here.
Yeah.
I think maybe what's happened is maybe the mic got bumped a little bit.
Yeah.
And just,
There you go. Yep.
Am I back?
You're back.
You're back.
I'm back. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, after kind of fast forward through the season out of knowing, hey, this is why I'm here for the church, right? I go through this like missional mindset of like, okay, let's do this for God, right? And so, yeah, we're doing all the things that you just described, like helping people, late night calls, making sure you're available. And as you get married and you have one kid and then 2 kids and then 3 and then 4, and we didn't even want 1. I mean, it was one of those situations like, okay, Lord, thank you. These are blessings.
Yep.
But it adds weight to your life as you go, because you're trying to learn, how do I manage all of this that God's richly blessed us with?
Yeah.
And then you add on roles and different roles in the church, and you're just saying yes to a lot of good things, a lot of great things, even in ministry, because it's God's work, right? I want to help people. I'm here to be a missional, person for Christ. Yep. And as you kind of allow that to stack up, you can only take so much. And I'm used to taking on pretty heavy loads.
Yeah.
Right. But you get to a point where you're in your 40s and all of a sudden you hit this wall and you're not getting back up. You're not getting back up, and you're asking the questions, what just happened? How did I get here?
Yeah.
And really it was this breakthrough moment that I had. For those of you who are feeling that tension of like, I don't know if I can keep going, or if this is what I'm supposed to be doing, or if I missed it all together and I'm doing it all wrong. But I had to go through this like really transformative moment of maturity as a pastor, of saying, going from doing things for God to doing it with God.
Yeah.
And that was a huge difference, right? I wanted to do all this for God, but God's like, thanks. But guess what? I would rather do it with you. And I have a plan that you're going to enjoy even more than if you just created your own way through this journey.
Ooh, man.
So,
yeah, I feel that deep. And went through a very similar like moment of, I have been doing all of these things thinking that this is ministry. This is amazing. We're leading people to relationship with Jesus, but never taking that moment to step back and be like, but is this what God has called me to and us to in this season?
Yeah.
Or are we just doing things to say that we're doing ministry, to pat ourselves on the back and then walk out the door? And man, like when you have that moment of realization, like my hope for leaders who work in the context of the local church is that we all have that realization far sooner in our careers. Yeah. And I think there's lots of conversations helping people discover that now sooner in their career than before. But it's just such a a truly transformative moment.
it is.
Yeah. And I think there's, I would sometimes have pushback against like this whole movement. A friend of mine would put it this way. It's like, everyone's using boundaries now as an excuse to not do anything. Right. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. But then also seeing at the same time those eras and those seasons of my life where it was like, I thought I had to, for whatever reason, because there is a good outcome. There is good fruit happening. There's things where it's like, well, God's going to take care of all my shortcomings and my lack of boundaries, or my lack of discipline in my schedule, or taking this late night. And it was like, no, you are a human physical being.
Right.
Even to your point, like people have always said to me, and maybe I should listen more, but like, I'm used to a certain workload or output amount that's just been a part of my life since I was young. Yeah. And there are times where I can now identify back times when that was healthy and the times where it really was not.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody ever wakes up and is like, one day I just want to run myself kind of metaphorically into the ground and be burned out. I don't think anybody ever has that intention. No. And I think most times, one, there's the level where people are just fatigued. They're not themselves. They're not the dad, the husband, the friend. That's where it started showing up for me. I'm like, I'm actually I'm a bad friend. Like I was leaving everything early because I got to scurry and put out this fire or whatever. And it's like, what am I doing? Yeah. What am I actually doing right now? And then, so that's like one case where your life and those closer to you can just see it and sense it. And then there's a whole nother side of it where it can lead to all other kinds of different vices. It could lead to all kinds of different, and we've seen those downfalls of so many different leaders in very public spaces and in different ways. And so, I praise God in my own life that it's just been like more like, okay, I was fatigued, I was burned out, I was tired, and didn't lead to all these other things that often is the case. Neil, talk to us about this problem, and even in your own journey, saying, how do we get better?
Yeah.
How do we do this differently? Yeah. Right? Because if we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different, like it's the definition of insanity, right?
Yeah. Well, the staggering statistics that really caught my attention was this. Number one, only 10% of pastors retire as pastors. Wow. Only 10%, right? So what's happening to the other 90%, right? And then the just cost reality of what it costs for burnout in our nation right now is $125 to $190 billion. Billion dollars.
Wow.
Because of the cause of burnout, which takes a person out of their employment. So they're paying them for a season, plus someone who's backfilling their position, plus the amount of time and energy that's wasted in between of that, trying to figure things out. And then the cost of the wake effect of how it impacts those who are in proximity to that individual. Yeah. Because it have a multiple impact for other employees and even their family. And so the amount of care that's required for those who experience true burnout is significant. And we can get on the preventive side of that. Yeah. And so that's really what's important, is that we see like this can be prevented, not completely. Yep. I think even if you're doing all the right things, you're going to go through circumstances in your life that can still lead to that. Yeah. So it doesn't just say, just do better, because that's not the answer. Right. It's how do we think about this differently and get on a different side of it, because we're very reactionary as an American culture, number one. And this is actually really worldwide on some level too. So,
and I think what you're describing and what is really healthy for all of us to acknowledge is that burnout is not just isolated to the world of local church ministry. No. I know all of us have experience in that space, and we've all faced probably different levels of that. Yep. But this is something that's pervasive in culture, in the marketplace, in ministry, in the world of nonprofit. So one, I think we have to start there. And two, as you're talking about, like, we have to get more preventative of it. It really is, I think, connected to the mental health conversation that our country has been having way more of in the last 10 years, right? Like the millennial generation is one of the first generations to advocate for mental health care as a part of our health care that our organizations are providing. I think this is like the next layer and the next step of that. It's not just about protecting our mental health. That's a critical component, but it's also about like, how do we have a true healthy work-life balance and a respect for being fully embodied people who all of our lives are connected, like our work, our family, our faith, all of that is connected, whether we work in ministry or not. And so how do we help people understand that and see that before they even ever step into the workforce, before they ever step into full-time careers and are like, man, I really wish someone would have told me that if I run at 100 miles an hour every day for 6 years, it wasn't going to end well. Yeah. Like, we know that, so we can help people. And I love that that's part of what you are aiming to do with what you guys are now doing through R3, is really helping people not only come back from, but also have those preventative practices to help us avoid burnout at a higher rate.
Yeah. Neil, what's one thing on this topic that you would encourage our listeners with about everyday leadership and these everyday practices around kind of some of this taking care of yourself, right? How do we get out and ahead of some of these things? What are some things you've seen that are working, that are practical, that we can kind of take off the shelf into everyday life?
Yeah, I'd say don't be someone that people has to follow. Be someone who people want to follow. And that is really, you have got to be the example. And that starts with the quality of your willingness to trust and follow Jesus is truly reflective in the type of leader you are. And so when you're actually believing that Jesus's way is truly the best way, it requires you to do things that is countercultural. Yeah. And it allows it to stand out in a way that's not like prideful or boastful, but it's like, that's highly successful, but it's not about him. And it's not about even ultimately their business. It's actually about making a difference.
Yeah.
And we all resonate with that, right? We all want to see something different in our world, something improve in our world, not at the cost of our of like destruction of your whole family and life.
Yeah.
But it should require cost, push the boundary, so to speak. But because of that, there's this incredible fruit that's taking place as a result of that cost. It's not reckless, in other words.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's like,
does.
are you really living that out in a way that would represent Jesus? Because you see his life, you see the cost that it really, that was upon his life. And you saw those who followed him represent that very, very well as also.
Yeah.
How can we just follow in those footsteps and trust, okay, I don't have all the answers. I don't have to have all the answers, but I know I want to make a difference.
Yep.
And it starts with serving others, serving the needs that exist today, and really helping others see that this is a true need, number one, and there are solutions to that, but it's going to require some work and sacrifice to make that truly happen.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been practicing, and all the things that we've been giving to folks, whether in our Impact Studio cohort or our Hub Leadership Program, and we've even led a groundwork community night on, is some iteration of a rule of life. Now, there's different kind of templates and tools around this, but like an old practice of just we all have a rule of life. We all have a way of life. We all have a way that we do our day, the way that we do our week. And some of it's intentional, some of it's not. And then some of it is these habits just kind of get ingrained into it.
Yeah.
And I would say, I think we have awareness of that daily, weekly schedule, productivity, all this kind of stuff, right? But all those things around schedule for the longest time in my life were around how can you be more productive?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Not necessarily how can you be more healthy?
Right.
Yes.
And whether physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of those things, right? And so that has been something that it's just a tool, and even like the annual things or the quarterly things that you do that are differently. And I really wrestled with that as a husband, as a person with a fairly full life with 3 kids and other things and ministry things and work, like all of it, to find those little pockets to take a day or to take a couple days or to take a trip once a year, right? And those things, like you said, it doesn't prevent everything, but man, does it create environments to really kind of revisit, who am I? What's my identity? What am I putting my worth in? And I can, even in a busy season, I can be away and people are actually going to be okay. And that has helped me move. Neil, how do people get involved with what you're doing? How do they find it? Who is this for? Tell us the story. Tell us some of the solutions that are coming out of what you're doing through R3 Restoration, because I believe in it so much. I think it's so critical. And also getting to that reality that you don't have to be at that point of you're totally burnt out.
Right.
To be tapping into some of these things.
Well, you kind of alluded to it, just like we have to have these healthier rhythms, these moments in time in our life that we push the pause button or do a different work even in our life that's different than the pace that we're currently going at and what we're currently doing. And so what we really want to try to get at is, how do we not just give them a place that they can actually experience that? It's sacred. It's safe. It is, it's just life-giving. It's truly a place for silence and solitude with the Lord. But what do you do at that time, though? You may take a week, you may take a day, but how do I maximize that time so I'm not feeling like I'm exerting more effort just to try to get healthy, but I'm genuinely experiencing the right thing during that time and season that you're taking it? And so we try to provide an assessment that really focuses on 4 domains. How are you doing spiritually, personally, relationally, vocationally, so that you can pinpoint the areas of life that's creating the stress, the strain, the anxiety, the tensions of life that are actually a drag for your life and your family. And this is for you. You could do this with your spouse. You can even do this with your whole family, or you can do this with your whole staff, however you want to approach this. But it allows you to discern, where is this coming from and what type of work do I need to do in order to get healthy? So you're not just trying to figure it out by trying to diet and trying to exercise and trying all these things, or I just need to pray harder, or I just need to get in God's word more, or I just need to take more retreats. A retreat is fine, but But if you don't know why you're taking that retreat, it's not beneficial for you. We want to help you understand the why behind that, and then give you practical tools during that time, so that it's effective, and then ongoing resourcing and care, so that you can be trending in the right direction sustainably.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I love what you talked about, that like there is a time for us to just like stop everything and kind of focus, but there's also a time to just shift gears and pay more attention to this part of our lives than maybe the work that we're doing on the day in and day out. Cause I think people hear like, I know highly successful people that are like, I'm so busy that I can't stop everything that I'm doing to focus on me. Yeah. But I think all of us could say, I could take a couple hours out of my schedule, or a little bit of time, or slow my day down a little bit to be able to focus on this. And I think that reality shift and change for people is critical to understand, that like there may come a season, if you don't slow down, where you are going to have to like completely take yourself out and put yourself on the bench and be away from all of it.
That's right.
But if you can do the small work, if you can do the little steps day in and day out, understand where you're at and understand how to turn in a better direction, you may be able to prevent sidelining yourself completely for a long extended period.
That's right.
Yeah. I think in all of this too, there's times where people have had an extended period of time off. Say during a summer, they have some sort of rhythm where they take 2 or 3 weeks off, or you've had a sabbatical, but you didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're like, wow, like I had an opportunity as I transitioned from local church ministry into what we're doing now with Wayfinders to take about a month off. It was great. And I'm like, one of my friends was like, you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's like the plan for this week is just like chill and maybe do 2 projects around the house, like, and just reconnect with your family and friends and all that stuff, like, that's fine. Yeah. But like, what's your plan for the other weeks? What are some of the objectives and goals of this? And I think that's where people get stuck a little bit. I've heard pastors who are like, I had a 2-month sabbatical, which they were grateful for, but they're like, it was just time off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Brandon, you're right. Cause like it's a tension of, you have to plan, but he's not meaning like you need to plan everything to the T and like you have all this work that you're doing in it and there's no margin, right? It's like you plan, and you're almost like planning and learning, how do I wait on the Lord through these things I'm going to be doing?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, you're not going to do anything. You're going to sit down and you're going to listen to God.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, I did that for 5 days. It was the hardest thing in my life.
Yeah.
I've done it for 1 day before, but by day 3, I thought I was going crazy. But there was this like detox breakthrough moment that I had in my life where I started hearing the voice of God in a way that I never have before. Because I chose to say, I'm going to release all of these thoughts, all of these emotions, and then get to the place where I'm really hearing the still small voice of God.
Yeah.
And when that took place, because that was intentional time that I did nothing and just listened for the voice of God, it's still allowing me to hear him differently to this day. But you have to take the time and plan that out to do nothing at times, or, hey, I'm going to go on a hike and I'm going to just pray out loud. You know, like there are different ways you can approach it, but choose like rightly how to approach that time that you do take off. Plan it well.
Dude, that's good. Neil, I think like Brandon and I have said, this has been a much needed conversation. And I think the work that you're doing through R3 is so needed. How do people find what you're doing? How do they get connected? Is there website stuff? Like, how can people get connected with what you're doing?
Well, our website is almost finished. We'll be done in about a month or 2. You'll be able to find us eventually at www.r3restoration.org. In the meantime, you can just contact me, neil.hinders@r3restoration.org, and we'll get you in the process right away. We do have 2 retreat locations, one just north here of Lebanon, Indiana, in Thorntown. Beautiful 150-acre property, wonderful place. It's a farm home that you have walking trails, all kinds of, it's just a way to really escape. Yeah. Then we have a place in New York off Lake Chautauqua there. It's a wonderful lakefront property that if you want more of a destination, if you're from the Indiana, Illinois, Ohio region area, then you can choose to take that as well. But we want to give you not only just a opportunity to have that assessment and have a conversation around just where you're at, but then give you the time and space, a planned time and space that is to your needs, not just a cookie cutter approach to a retreat, but it's going to be very customized to what you need and in the right time so that you can prepare wisely for it. Because if you can imagine, like sometimes you've taken a vacation with your family and you don't feel rested at the end of that vacation with your family. You're wiped out and you're like, I need another vacation from my vacation. You know, we want you to say, I can go to this retreat. Everything is in order. The bases are covered. Maybe I don't even have my phone. And you can fully dial into what that experience is supposed to be. Then on the other side of it, you know that what you learn is going to actually, it's not done there, right? What you learn is going to produce this fruit because we're going to make a plan that's going to allow sustainability and health in light of what you've learned about yourself and your needs.
It's good.
So
it's good.
So good.
So just contact me. Let me know. We'll get you having some conversations around where to begin, because you may not know where to begin, and that's okay. You don't have to have the answers. We don't have all the answers until we sit down with you and we understand. And so we'll start there just with the conversation, and we'll go from there.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
Well, we want to say thanks to all of you for tuning in to this episode of the For Everyday Leaders podcast by Wayfinders. We hope it helps you lead in the everyday spaces and moments of life.
Yeah, and we would love for you to continue to join us on the journey of the For Everyday Leaders podcast. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. Follow the show there. Leave a rating. It'll help people find incredible conversations like we're having with Neil. Neil, thank you so much for taking time, hanging out with us. Thanks for the coffee.
My pleasure.
This has been incredible.
Thank you guys too.
Thanks, man.